Hello and welcome to episode 32 of my Yamaha Virago Cafe Racer project. I am Scott McCutcheon of Sovereign Studios. I apologize that this episode is coming to you 4 months after my latest one, which is quite a long time. I apologize. Just really haven't had a whole lot of time or, in all honesty, motivation to work on the Virago. Just regular things with life. And then, as you can see, I've been doing a lot of work on my Buell over here. Rebuilding that, refurbishing it, getting it ready for the road again. I did a lot of mods to the CRF as well. Took that out on some dirt. We'll talk about that maybe in a different video. Did some other work on the CBR as well, and with all that stuff, just haven't had the time to really do anything else in the Virago. But today I did get the time to do some things, and we're gonna go over some of that real quick, so that you guys are kind of caught up with me, because this stuff I didn't capture on video. The big thing you'll notice is that I now have the muffler installed. This I ordered from the same guys who did the pipe, Matt Exhausts. Got the muffler custom built from them, which worked out really well. There were two things that I didn't like about it. First being that, and this was actually a problem with the exhaust more than the muffler itself, but it didn't have the tabs on it, so I had to weld the tabs myself. Matt Exhaust actually sent the tabs to me, which was great, but they weren't welded on there. So if you didn't have a welder or didn't know how to weld, you'd have to go get that done, which would be a huge pain. But otherwise, great. It worked out real well. I also had to custom make this bracket right here to mount the muffler. And you'll see that, it has just barely enough clearance, to avoid the hopping tire back here on the swing arm. And it mounts it nice and rigid to the frame. So I think this is going to work out pretty well. You'll notice it's big thick steel that I bent into place and made this huge bracket around, so it's actually bolted in twice along with the rear set. But I didn't make a video of me making this bracket or mounting the pipe. So that's just something you guys are going to have to live with. What else did I do? I did a couple other little wiring things, but most importantly, it was really just the, which we'll cover the wiring stuff in another video, subsequent video. But really, when I was doing this bracket is when I decided that these rear sets that I bought just suck. They're real short. So, your foot kind of hangs off the side anyway. They're very short. And then the actual, action up here is just plastic. This is like a little plastic nub. And it just feels cheap. It feels like it's probably going to break if you jam on it real hard. I'm just not comfortable with them, especially, for this manually operated brake back here that's really crappy anyway. I do want to be able to jam on that if I have to. But either way, I decided that those suck. They're terrible. So you'll notice I went and got the Cognito Moto rear sets. These are a lot better, specifically because, as you can tell, they're actually wider. So we'll have a good inch or two extra to mount your foot on. This action is a lot thicker, a lot heavier, and it's textured to catch your boots, as opposed to this slick, smooth plastic. You'll notice it's also tapered, which is real nice, to give you a little more clearance and a little more of a natural foot position. But then one of the other really cool things is, I'm not going to tear them out to show you, but underneath here is a actual ball bearing. So the way these spin is very smooth, meaning they're you know, their action is real smooth, and that's a sealed ball bearing, so it's never going to get dirty. Whereas these were just like, I mean, there's no bearing. It's just on a slide, you know. So they're just crappy. I mean, yeah, I bought them on eBay. They're little generic rear sets. I think they were $40 or something like that. But it was $40 wasted. These were $200, but you didn't waste it, you know. So I got those. We're gonna install those today. I also got something I thought was really cool. Was that Cognito makes these heel guards that you'll mount in place, and they'll protect your heel from bouncing up and getting caught in the swing arm, which I think is pretty cool. So we're gonna put those in place too. Okay, yeah. So the trick to these things, you'll notice that they're kind of tapered, right? There's a bend in there, and that means they're tapered for the left and the right side. So determining which side is which, you know, is relatively simple. Ideally, you want them to flare out as they're going back, you know. So, you know, your heel is going to be more susceptible to being pushed, you know, away from the wheel based on the way that these taper. How these get installed is going to be different depending on what bike you're putting them on. In the Virago, what we're going to do is we're basically going to put it right here and then, you know, mount it on the inside of the rear set. In addition, on the other side, because of how I mounted this bracket, you know, I'm actually really glad that it turned out this way, because again, I'm going to put it on the front face. But you'll see how it basically turned out perfect in terms of that bend, for allowing my foot to basically, you know, cater into that bend right above the exhaust. I think that turned out great. It also has the benefit of hiding my really shitty welding, which I think is cool. You know, so I think that works out great. The only downside is that, and it's not really a downside, it's actually great, that the Cognito Moto rear sets use a larger bolt than the one that I was using. So this was the one that I was using. These are the ones that came with the Cognito Moto, and these are a good solid fit, you know, as opposed to these, which, you know, had some play in them and were kind of loose. So these will be a lot more stable, and they still fit into the factory housings. Unfortunately, they don't fit in this little custom bracket that I built for the exhaust. So I'm gonna have to pop this out and drill out this hole a little bit to fit the new size bolts. Not gonna show that on video either. I'm just gonna do it. I'll hop back to this once they're closer to being installed. Okay, before I go throwing this back on the bike, I kind of wanted to show off the subtle genius of this bracket that I made. So as you can tell, this is a 1/4 inch plate, steel plate, that I welded poorly together into basically just a U bracket, and then I built this and bent this custom shaped angle bracket to hold the exhaust. So the main reason it's so thick is because the muffler actually weighs quite a bit. You know, probably in the neighborhood of 5 pounds. You know, maybe 3 to 5 pounds. So it's got to hold that up in place, and it's got to do it while riding down the road. You know, so there's a lot of stress happening right around here. The real trick is these 2 bolts, because both of these are really kind of difficult to get at. They're a little inaccessible once this thing is mounted. But more importantly, you know, I felt having the actual threads welded into the bracket itself provided additional stability, you know, for the whole thing. So the trick is, you'll notice there's only one on the end, and that's because when this slides in place, right, we have a default bracket here, but the top bolt hole is actually where the rear set gets mounted into. So this is really just a stabilization bolt, you know, to stabilize the mounting of this bracket. This bolt is where the rear set comes through, and then this bolt up here is actually just to hold the muffler itself. You know, so through some trial and error, I got this together. If you guys want the dimensions for it, you know, I can try to measure it out, and we can see. But chances are, you know, somebody's gonna watch this video and they're gonna make some aluminum shit that is, you know, 3D printed, or, you know, CAD modeled and cast in aluminum to make this a better bracket. Because this one's heavy and ugly and whatever. But that is the sort of thing that a lot of people are probably going to need. You're going to need some type of mounting bracket to mount your muffler. I only made this one because I thought I would be capable and save myself some money. But even when I went looking for them, specific brackets like this do not exist, you know, for how I wanted to mount it, or how I needed to mount my muffler. So, you know, good luck. If you happen to find an on-market bracket that I could replace mine with, definitely leave a comment and let me know. But otherwise, I think this is great, and we'll do the trick. So let's go ahead and mount it back up, and we'll finish this up. Okay, putting the bracket back on. You put the bracket on first. I have basically a 2-width kind of bolt. And the reason is there's not a lot of clearance back there. So even if you were able to get a wrench, you know, or, you know, like a nylon threaded lock nut, or, you know, some washers back there, I mean, you probably could, but it's a huge pain. So having that threaded bolt back there makes this a lot easier. So if you get a bolt like this, you don't even need a washer. And in this case, you know, just kind of bolts in right there. As for getting the rear set in place, that one's easy too. This is the one. You'll notice these rear sets flare out, and obviously you want them to flare out away from the bike, not flare in, which I don't think would be even possible to mount that way. But depending on how you mount your shift linkages, you may choose to make one the right side or one the left side, because that pivot joint will be on the top or the bottom depending on where you mount it. For me, I need the pivot joint on the top, so we'll slide it in place. This bolt does have a washer. It needs to come in the back side, just like that. Now recall that we're going to be installing these bad boys here. You'll notice that Cognito did drill like a hole in here. I assume this was sort of like a positioning hole, something where you're like, if you had a nub there, or maybe like another screw or something, you could put it there to make sure the you know, the guard doesn't flop around. I don't really have that capability, so I'm just gonna kind of hope that it works. Doesn't need to be fully tightened down just yet. We want to make sure everything's going to be back in the right place. And yeah, so I've already got the linkage for this side, which I don't think I'm going to need to change. However, the other side, when I remounted it, you may notice from my original video, I actually mounted the rear sets on the bottom hole. I moved them up a month or two ago when I did this install here, mostly because I needed to be able to clear the pipe with my foot. We actually moved them, and in doing so, you know, now the linkages need to be a little longer, which is unfortunate because I didn't have a longer linkage at the time. You know, I didn't have a longer linkage, so I've ordered new ones, and hopefully they'll be arriving soon. Get that tested out. Okay, so there's kind of what the Cognito Moto rear sets look like. They're a little loose. Once they're tightened down, they'll be better. Alright, and there's a look at the rear set fully installed with everything back in place. heel guard, keeping your foot away from the swing arm, you know, and then real nice grippy peg for your feet and toes. Good taper across the board. Overall, I think that's going to be a really good change. You got a lot of room. You can see it covers my whole foot. You know, which is pretty nice. They do make a fixed, or this is the fixed peg version. They do make a version where the pegs swivel in, sort of like the ones on my Buell do, where they like, you know, they pop in like that. I didn't get that version. I think they're the same price. But I didn't get that version, if only because you get a little extra grip with the fixed ones. Cool, so I'm happy with that. Let's get the other side on. All right, and very simply, there's the other one. Like I said earlier, I was having to redo the linkages, specifically because of this. Because while I had it down here, you know, I had a linkage that worked, but it was barely long enough. So that's still on the way. I'll fix that up later, but as for now, I think these rear sets are awesome. I'm super happy with the heel guards. You know, I think that is a really nice addition. That, you know, once your foot's in there and kind of like pocketed on those things, I think it's going to make the bike feel really good to ride. So, altogether, really happy with those. Cognito Moto rear sets. Very cool. So, good video for number 32. Hopefully I can get back to this, you know, now that I'm starting to wind down some of my other projects. You know, the Buell will be back together. My CRF already got back together, so did my CBR. So now that those are both street worthy, I'm not having to work on them probably for another 6 months or so. You know, I can start really looking at finishing up this Virago. So stay tuned. We'll be getting it done. Thanks, guys.